The confirmation is becoming clearly every day. The cause of global warming is man. The reasonable certainty that some of the consequences are irreversible, especially with regards to the sea and the forecast for the coming decades, with the most optimistic scenes passing through a very narrow path. There are, in summary, the contents of 6th report of the IPCC, the world's leading organism on climate change. Not just any document, but the most comprehensive and up-to-date knowledge package on the subject. A clear warning alarm on the scientists are ringing for the world leaders who are called in the coming months to sit at a negotiation table. On the occasion of a great World Congress to be held in Brazil on June 4th, 1992 on the subject, Let's Save the Earth. How? How do you want to save this cosmic creature? With which methodologies and with which awareness? As we ask you these questions, we feel it groaning with pain its cosmic nature, broken by consciousnessless science. The Earth needs your love to be able to give you what you need in order to live in health of body and spirit. If you deprive her of this great good, she will not be able to give you life but death. If you really want sincerely to save this cosmic mother, you must avoid breaking her natural balances with the unnatural elements that your consciousnessless science produces. Only then you will be able to save the earth and yourselves. From Heaven to Earth, Eugenio Siragusa. Our planet is composed, as everyone knows, by more than 90% of water. Human behavior through pollution is exterminating entire ecosystems. Those few forms of marine life that will still survive will receive the last shot of grace from intensive fishing. This is also happening with the other habitats on our planet and not just with the marine one. The 90% of the oxygen present in our atmosphere is generated by phytoplankton from the whole small aquatic plant organisms, algae and cyanobacteria present in our oceans. If the phytoplankton chain is disrupted and the oxygen chain present on our planet disappears, life as we know will no longer exist. It is not a script from a science fiction movie, but a nightmare that will very soon become a dramatic reality if there is no radical and drastic change. Today, in 2021, we have rovers on the surface of Mars that break down the atmosphere, and instead of finding a solution to save our planet, and we know with renewable energy and bio-based plastics it would be possible, we worry about progress violating our Mother Earth. There is no science without conscience, said Eugenio Siragusa, and today, what is man doing? Is he really making technological progress, or maybe he's digging his own grave without any chance of getting out of it? What we're talking about is not a normal succession of glacial areas, nor the global warming that occurs every 1,000 years due to the displacement of the Earth's magnetic axis. There are many who insist on this, but it must be stopped because if there is no knowledge, change will never happen. The information is very clear and we will show it here. Humanity is the one and only responsible for the environmental disaster, and there are 1,300 pages of a report confirming this. In fact, from the IPCC 2021 report on climate change from the official website, we can textually read. The 13 chapters of the working group's report provide an assessment of the current evidence on the physical science of climate change. The evaluation of the knowledge is acquired from observation and analysis of paleoclimatic archives and simulation models, as well as physical, chemical and biological climatic processes. We are talking about a 1,300 pages report. What does this mega report transmit? Let's see. The first volume of the 6th assessment report of the Working Group on Climate Change leaves no place for doubt about the urgent need to reduce emissions. This is the most accurate data in history and indicates without any mistake that it is the fault of human activities. There is no escape way, and from a long time ago we don't have more time to argue about who is right and who is wrong, neither to listen to those who tell the opposite. The facts are clear. It may already be too late and our children will suffer the consequences. But is there a solution? Well, even if there was a clear change in trend, this would be very slow, even with very strong and steady reductions in carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases and other polluting materials. This would only limit the flow of climate change. What the report tells us is that if, on the one hand, thanks to this reduction, certain benefits for air quality could be observed, on the other hand, it would take 20 or 30 years to stabilize the Earth's temperature. Continuing with the report, we read, "It is unmistakable that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean and land. Fast and widespread changes have occurred in the atmosphere, oceans, cryosphere and biosphere. The observed increases in greenhouse gas concentrations, well mixed since about 1750, are unequivocally caused by human activities. Since 2011, carbon emissions have continued to rise, reaching annual averages of 410 parts per million for carbon dioxide, 1866 parts per billion for methane, and 332 parts per billion for nitrous oxide. In 2019, land and ocean absorbed an almost constant portion globally, equivalent to approximately 56% per year of carbon emissions from human activity over the past 6 decades. This means that in the last 60 years, 56 of all the pollutants emitted by us has been absorbed by the earth and oceans, and that today we have the highest percentage in parts per million and per billion of carbon dioxide, methane and nitrous oxide in the atmosphere. If we breathe inside a bag, we will see that 10 minutes later we will faint, and that is exactly what is happening on a global scale. Continuing is textually written in black over white. Each of the last 4 decades has been warmer than any previous decade since 1850. Human influence has warmed the climate at an unprecedented rate for at least 2,000 years. The graph we are looking at shows changes in the temperature of the global surface, reconstructed by paleoclimatic files and direct observations. If we look at the graph on the left in the time period from 1850 to 2020, we see a mega peak of global temperatures. In the graph on the right, where the annual average is estimated, there is another peak from 2000 to 2020. It seems clear that nothing can be done, as global temperatures will continue to rise. Observed warming is determined by emissions from human activities, and with the warming of a greenhouse gas partially masked by aerosol cooling. Here are some clear and unequivocal facts. We are the cause of the destruction of the planet, both in terms of global warming and air pollution. The modus operandi of the report is to make statements with text written in blue that are the title of a paragraph, and then to compare with certain data in hand the statements made, making this relationship irrefutable. The magnitude of recent changes taking place throughout the climate systems as a whole, the current states of many aspects of the climate systems, are unprecedented over many centuries, over many thousands of years. The situation has hardly ever been more dramatic than it is now. Human-induced climate change is already affecting many extreme weather and climate events in many regions of the world. Evidence of changes observed in extreme conditions such as heat waves, heavy rains, droughts, and tropical cyclones has been reinforced, and in particular their attribution to human influence. Climate change is already affecting all inhabited regions of the world, with human influence that contributes to many changes observed over time and to climate extremes. Definitely, what this report tells us, beside 5 scenes that are then proposed from data, is that we have about 10 years left before planetary cataclysms of irreparable magnitude begin. In many aspects, it is already too late, because as the report tells us, the global surface temperature will continue to rise at least until mid-century. In all the possible emission scenes, global warming of 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees will be overcome throughout 21st century unless in the coming decades there will be no deep reductions in emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. So, dear friends, even if from tomorrow we start to reduce emissions, the data and science tell us that temperatures will continue to rise until 2050. Continuing in the reading of the report, it is highlighted that in 2019 has been the highest atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide in the last 2 million years, and in the last 50 years, the temperature of planet Earth has grown at a rate that has no equal in the last 2,000 years. The only time there was more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was when the volcanic eruptions took place millions of years ago. Now, with the data in our hands, can we really say that man is not responsible for this natural disaster? We already know that by sending a single email from 1 megabyte, we already emit 19 grams of carbon dioxide. With the use of the internet and the electric network to edit this video, we probably pollute the equivalent of a tailpipe for more than a day. The world in which we live is a sick world, and as Eugenio Siragusa said, we cannot escape the cause and effect law. Many changes in the climate system will become bigger in direct relation to global warming, including increasing the frequency and intensity of extreme temperatures, marine heat waves and heavy rains, agricultural and ecological droughts in some regions, and the percentages of intense tropical cyclones, as well as the reduction of Arctic sea ice and the permafrost snow cover. For those who don't already know, if the poles melt, large amounts of fresh water will settle in the seas and will mix with the salt water, changing the temperature and chemical composition of the oceans, resulting in the variation of ocean currents that marine flora and fauna have been following for millions of years, leading them inevitable to their extinction. The direct consequence for human is that we will drown, taking into account the fact that there will be an increase in the level of the oceans that will lead in the coming decades to the flooding of the coastal areas, which in most of the northern hemisphere they are highly populated areas. It does not end here. The melting of glaciers also involves the displacement of the magnetic poles that protect the Earth from sun radiation. There is no more time. The point of no return has already passed, but despite everything, hope is the last to die. The choice between life and death is only ours.